EPC rules are about to change. So, today we're going to be talking about what Cambridgeshire landlords should do now and could do now. Your rental property might legally meet the EPC rules today, but it could be completely unprepared for what's coming next. And here's the difficult part. We know that EPCs are changing, but we still don't know precisely what every landlord will have to do to comply. So, before you spend thousands of pounds upgrading your rental property, let me explain what we know, what remains uncertain, and what you could sensibly do now. So, the government intends privately rented homes to achieve the equivalent of an EPC C by 2030, unless a valid exemption or transitional arrangement applies. That sounds relatively straightforward. You look at your existing EPC, follow the recommendations, improve the property until it reaches a C. Tick. Unfortunately, it's not going to be quite that simple because the way EPCs are calculated is going to change too. At the moment, an energy performance certificate gives a property one main rating from A to G. And that rating is largely estimated based on the estimated cost of heating the home, providing hot water and lighting it. But future EPCs will display four separate headline measurements, which are energy cost, fabric performance, heating system performance, and smart readiness. And add to that mixture, the government is also developing a home energy model known as HEM. That's going to replace the existing SAP model. In plain English, the EPC will no longer be dominated by one headline cost-based calculation. Now, it should provide a more complete picture of how homes actually perform. Fabric performance, obviously, how it retains heat, heating system. We'll look at the efficiency and environmental impact of the heating and hot water systems. Smart readiness, well, consider how well residents can understand and control their energy use. And energy cost, well, is going to remain part of the assessment. Now, that should produce a more useful piece of information. But we don't have every piece of the compliance puzzle. What we don't know yet is exactly which one of those measurements a privately rented property will have to pass, how they work together, whether one strong result could compensate for a weaker one. And that's why I'd be really super wary of anyone claiming they can already guarantee exactly what works for your property by 2030. Now, EPC calculations have changed before. When they first introduced, reducing carbon compensation, or consumption rather, was an important part of the thinking. Headline rating, landlords recognise today, has become heavily influenced by estimated running cost. And that sometimes produced some rather strange recommendations, particularly if you've got an older property, a Victorian property. Let's say it's got an EPC D. You may have been advised to install internal wall installation or even underfloor heating. Now, those recommendations might help the calculation, but they're going to be impractical. They're disproportionately expensive or just unsuitable for the building. An EPC calculation doesn't always, well, the EPC calculation now doesn't always understand the practicalities of owning, maintaining individual properties. Under the future system, the properties, fabric, and heating controls are likely to become more visible. And that means, in some respects, older storage heaters could be a particular concern. We've got many purpose-built flats and converted properties across Cambridgeshire that still rely on traditional night storage heaters. And these heaters charge using off-peak electricity and release the stored heat during the day. So, tick on the cost, but the problem is control. A resident may have a very warm home in the morning, but find that much of the stored heating has disappeared by the evening. And then they've got to top it up with expensive daytime boost or add an additional portable heating. Older storage heatings can also be difficult to control from room to room and may not integrate well with modern thermostats or smart controls. Modern high heating retention storage heaters can retain heat more effectively and normally offer better programming and temperature control. Something to think about. Other modern electric heating systems can provide heat on demand and allow individual rooms to be scheduled separately. But And this is an important part. Don't buy a new heating system simply because the manufacturer describes it as energy efficient. A product brochure and an EPC calculation, they're not the same thing. So before committing to a particular system, speak to a properly qualified EPC assessor and ask how the proposed heating will be treated within the assessment. Now, heating is only one part of the property. The new approach is also expanded to place a much greater emphasis on the fabric of the building. And so there's little point in installing a sophisticated heating system if most of the heating immediately escapes through the roof, the walls, the windows, the floor. And if you've got a grade listed property, you're going to have single glazing. So depending on the property, sensible improvements might include things like loft insulation, draft reduction, improving the glazing where you can, hot water cylinder installation, low energy lighting or better heating controls. Thermostatic radiator valves may also improve a resident's ability to control the temperature in individual rooms, but the order of the work really matters. It may make more sense to reduce the property's heat loss before spending money on a new heating system. Older and listing buildings need particular care. The wrong type of insulation can trap moisture, and that's going to contribute to damp and damage the fabric of the property. So, one standard solution will not be right for every house in your portfolio. So, what should you do now? Well, first, audit every property you own. Record its present EPC rating, the actual numerical score, and the certificate's expiry date. A property 1 point below a C is very different position from a property at the bottom of Band D. Second, review what has changed since the EPC was produced. Has additional loft insulation been installed? Has the boiler or heating system been replaced? Have new windows or heating controls been fitted? If improvements have already completed, your current certificate may no longer accurately represent the property. Third, identify potential weaknesses. Is the heating old or difficult to control? Are there obvious drafts? Does the property have insufficient loft insulation? Could sensible work be completed during the next void period? And might the property achieve a C under the existing calculation before the new system takes over? Now, these are expected to be transitional arrangements for properties that achieve an EPC using existing energy efficiency rating before the relevant deadline. And that could make acting early worthwhile, but please don't rush into work without advice. Any improvements you make now will initially be judged under the current methodology. And remember that rating will be, on the present rules, last 10 years. Finally, keep your evidence, retain invoices, photographs, product specifications, guarantees and professional recommendations for every energy efficiency improvement. Because if the insulation is hidden or an assessor can't verify what's been installed, good documentation may be the only way to ensure that the property is properly considered. And there's also a proposed maximum investment requirement qualifying expenditure. So that may need to be evidence if it's to count towards that limit. October 2030 may sound a long way away, but millions of rental properties could require some level of assessment or improvement. And if everyone waits, there'll be a rush for the same assessors, the same installers, the same contractors. The price will go up. The sensible response is not to panic, and it's not to start spending blindly. It's to understand the position of each property, obtain property-specific advice and plan improvements around maintenance, refurbishment and change of resident. My biggest concern is that landlords will spend thousands of pounds on the most obvious improvements only to discover later that it will not measure their particular property needs. A planned improvement protects your property. A rushed improvement may simply be spending your money. I'll continue to translate the EPC changes into plain English as the remaining details become clearer, because better informed landlords make better decisions. And if you want more information like this on rental in Cambridgeshire, why don't you just follow us on Maxine Lester TV? We look forward to seeing you there.